Hello and welcome to another Frontline update with myself, Jonathan MS Pierce on ATP Geopolitics. This is the 20th of January 2023. Let's go straight away. Well, just to let you know, I've done my news update, which normally would come at the beginning of these Frontline updates, but there was so much news happening that I've done a separate video. Please go and check that out. That'll give you the context for understanding the frontline, or at least not necessarily for understanding the frontline, but seeing what's going on around in terms of the armaments being given. And there's a lot of that going on at the moment. There's Ramstein happening today. So we should see Ukraine be given an awful lot of equipment. And that sort of gives you some understanding as to what will happen going forward on these front lines. Okay, go to the northeast first, Kupiansk to Svatove to Kreminna. Not an awful lot of change. Just a little bit of news up in Novoselivska, which is liberated by the Ukrainians, as according to no reports. They pushed the Russian forces back, cleared it yesterday, and managed to grab a foothold in the rail track there, bordering Kuzmivka to the north of the town. The Ukrainians have the road leading to Volodymyrivka secured. Rebar says of this, so this is pro-Russian source, saying that in the Kupiansk-Svatove sector, Ukrainian units with armor support launched an attack on Novoselivska from the southwest. They reached the local train station and are waiting for reinforcements to continue toward Kuzmivka from the northwest. Novoselivska itself is still in no man's land. Well, Ukrainians have said that they hold Novoselivska as opposed to it being no man's land. And that's been said for a couple of days. So let's go to there. This is Kupiansk up here down to Svatove, and Kuzmivka is northwest of Svatove. As we zoom in, we have Novoselivska here. And the train station there. So they are pushed. This is exactly pretty much where my lines were from, well, really for some time. There, Kuzmivka is super important. They do have the heights here, so Ukraine has a height advantage. This is elevated ground down into Kuzmivka, and as according to Rebar, the Ukrainians are awaiting reinforcements to carry on pushing from either southwest or the northwest onto Kuzmivka, and that will be important for unlocking further advances towards Svatove. Other than that, not a lot of news until we come down to the area of Kreminna, and just north of Kreminna, we have the Russians attacking towards Terny. This pocket here that I have as grey zone, actually, you look at Poulet-Valon's map, they have this as being gained uh, by the Russians. So this is a solid gain they have. So according to them, the Russians have really pushed out and taken this whole area. Now, this is in stark contrast to the claims that Russia are losing ground just south of Kreminna. I've adjusted my maps a little bit. The Russians are pushing, the Ukrainians are pushing sort of northeast towards, in between Kreminna and Starokreznyanka. So that is that place there. It looks like that is the push from the Ukrainians, as you can see from this map here. So up up through maybe Kuzmina, but as well northeast here. Uh, are they going to cut through there? As I talked about months ago now, this would be, if you're going to surround Kreminna, you've got to get in between these settlements and strike across. The problem is you've got the river there, but you strike across the railway line that connects this conurbation. And if you can cut there, then job done. But it's kind of counterproductive to be doing all this work and then lose it north of Kreminna. So they've lost ground in Chervonopepivka, they've lost ground around Ploshchanka, and it seems just in this big pocket here, again, the Russians are pushing forward. That has gone backwards and forwards since Liman was liberated, and now the Russians are pushing towards Yampolivka, Terny, and Zarichna. So, yeah, I don't know quite exactly what's happening there. There's not too much information comes out. The ISW, for example, I mean, talks about how, just to go backwards a little bit, they talk about how Belarus, this most dangerous course of attack, is more likely to, if it's going to happen, it won't happen now in spring. It's more likely to happen towards the end of the year. Then they talk about the problems existing between the Russian military and Prigozhin and the Wagner mercenaries. So a lot of discussion on that, which is well worth reading. And that's also military bloggers, Russian military bloggers, are attacking the idea of attacking from Belarus at the moment, which is kind of I'd agree with that. Why attack from Belarus when you could put those troops and equipment to better use on a shorter front line? If you attack from Belarus, you are extending the front line considerably, depending on what you decide to do, and that won't work in favor of concentrated, successful attacks. I would say, and that's what Russian military bloggers are saying as well. But yeah, sorry. Anyway, as we get back to the Kreminna area, Ukrainian forces, says the ISW, conducted counteroffensive to capture Novoselivsk, so they have it being captured. A military blogger claimed that Ukrainian forces are waiting for reinforcements to continue the counteroffensive to liberate Kuzmivka. That's probably referring to the Rebar claim. There's Russian sabotage and reconnaissance groups operating all around in the area up there. And that's just, I just highlighted that because we think of sabotage and reconnaissance as all funky, going undercover or whatever. It's more likely than not going to be groups operating drones. Drones are the reconnaissance du jour at the moment, and so there'll be drone groups breaking through into kind of open fields. When we talk about areas being controlled, okay, it's not like you've got a long line of human beings just standing along these lines, right? There'll be a pocket of people there, and in between, although there might be a line on the map, there's nothing really, and so groups from either side can penetrate behind these front lines, these so-called front lines, uh, send up their drones, get some intel on what's going on around here, and then locate a target for artillery to hit and communicate with artillery. So that's what's going to be going on. There'll be groups of those small units behind both sets of lines doing exactly that, and being the eyes in the sky for artillery. Um, in the Liman sector, says Rebar, the enemy is expecting an offensive by the Russian armed forces from several directions. Units from Donetsk and other sectors are being redeployed closer to the line of contact. Ukrainian airborne assault troops plan to attack Russian positions near Dobrova. This appears to be kind of what is happening. Yes, they are predicting apparently attacks in this area, and there are attacks going on in this area, and it looks like the Russians do have some considerable land that they've taken back north of Kreminna, and it could stretch as far as here, really. Again, that Poulet um, Volant map is a nice, clear map. I do like their maps. I should use them more often. And attacks towards Bilorivka, again, repelled. Again, in fact, that's what we come to see down here with ISW, Bilorivka, and Terny. So here, Haidai, Ukrainian, reports that there was heavy fighting between Russian and Ukrainian forces on the outskirts of Kreminna and near Dobrova. So again, not a lot of information coming out about here, not a lot of footage coming out from here. There seems to be tight operational security. All these hints about, oh, it's all happening in Kreminna, and yet all I keep hearing is that Russians are making gains north of Kreminna. What is actually going on? Is there really activity happening on the outskirts of Kreminna? Well, even the Poulet Volant map here does show that the Russians have lost some ground just south of Kreminna, so their line has been pushed back, and this northeastern push, as I talked about earlier. So it does seem to be stuff going on there. Just details are thin on the ground, as you'd expect in a war with operational security. There you go. Let's move on to. So I said repelled attacks around Kuzmivka. Apparently, Spirina. So I said yesterday the Ukrainians had gained ground here. I didn't change it on my map because just a bunch of open fields, not an awful lot of point. And lo and behold, the very next day, the Russians have regained that ground. So this area here was gained by the Ukrainians yesterday and today, or sort of day before yesterday, and then yesterday the Russians took that back. Okay, let's come and look at the Solidar north of Bakhmut area. If I can get my map to behave, or more likely my fingers to behave. So we'll look at Solidar first and what's been going on there. Well, what's been going on is attacks all around here. Literally, Vesele, Rozdilivka, Mikhailivka, or from there towards Krasnopolivka. And in fact, we've got some geolocated footage there. Solidar, Bladatny, Krasnohora, Berezkivivka, Pidorodny. Now, I've actually changed my map around Pidorodny to show advance of Russians right onto the outskirts of the northern part of Bakhmut here, and to take all of Pidorodny. That's according to a few sources, Russian sources. Let's go and have a look at what people say. We'll go to ISW first. So Uh, Again, Solidar, Verkhonomakyansk, so that's north, just south of b- the northerly Bilorivka, goodness me, and still all these kind of usual places, and all those names that I've just read off are all repelled attacks around there. And really, for ISW, it's all about Klishchivka. So I'll get onto that in a little while. Let's go to Rybar, northeast of Bakhmut. There's heavy fighting for Krasnohora and Peroskivivka. Ukrainian command is sending additional units there, some of which are refusing to fight. Interesting from Rybar. Rybar often say things that are happening to the Russians at the time. This happened the other day, and it's pointed out by a few people in the comments. Exactly that. It's like they claimed that the Ukrainians had dud ammunition around, I think it was around Avdivka, and that was exactly what the Ukrainians were saying about the Russians. Now, both could be true, but it seems very convenient that the Ukrainians make a claim, and then a day later, that claim comes out from the Russians about the Ukrainians in exactly the same area. You're like, yeah, I'm pretty sure there's some projection going on here. So we need to be careful about claims on both sides, obviously. The Ukrainians intend to attack Russian paratroopers at the Shevchenko-Pidorodny line to retain key roads north of Bakhmut. We'll get further down south in a second. So, if we go to Poulet-Voulon, nice clean map from them, you can see what is going on here. So, we have Vesele, Rosalivka, Sil, Krasnopilia. All these areas are, you can see, are being pressured by the Russians, as you'd imagine. So I talked yesterday about is this a culmination? Could we be that because there wasn't any movement for a day or so? And actually, that might have been a bit premature because the Russians are certainly pressuring, as we'll see, indeed down in Klishchivka, south of Bakhmut. Now, we've got some geolocated footage of a unit of Russians walking just by this railway line towards Krasnopilia and then getting absolutely taken out by artillery. So let's just go and find that. Sorry about that. Where have I put everything? No, it's Syriac Maps has got it, and it is here. So this is you can find this footage on a number of different places. It's Scala footage from video footage from Scala Battalion shows Ukrainian army artillery stopping the Russian army. DPR LPR forces attempt again. They never talk about Wagner. These guys Syriac, so it's always the Russians, not Wagner, attempting to capture the town of Krasnopolivka. Just to let you know, Krasnopolivka is here. So this I've geolocated. I mean, it's fairly easy to geolocate this one. They're walking along the railway lines just behind that, basically around here. Apart from it's all covered in snow. No, I think it's around here actually. As you can see in the distance, the railway line curves round, and it's all straight down here. And they're walking in the snow-covered ground here. So I won't show you the results of it because it's oh god, I hate it when that happens. But I will show you, a meaningful amount of troops, and then what happens when you set artillery on them. Now you've got good number of troops there. Good, I don't know, at least 20 troops um, walking towards there. There's that railway line. It curls around further in the distance. You can see the people walking there, and then it curls around in the distance there, and then this area gets peppered. I think they might even be using some form of cluster munitions. You see those little sparks going off there. Not exactly sure what kind of munition that is they're using, but anyway, there you go. You then get images of people, but that is a unit getting taken out just north of Krasnopolivka. So if we go and look here, so that is a unit there. It shows that obviously they're attacking, but they're also having a hard time of it there. But yeah, not too much movement, as I say, apart from Pidorodny. Tough fighting all around there. And then we move on to Bakhmut itself as a town. So here we're the very north of Bakhmut here. As I talked about, Pidorodny, Poulet-Volant has the Russians making a bit of a gain just to the west of Pidorodny. And then we come to the next map, which is Bakhmut itself. And we're going to look at the north of Bakhmut for the time, or north and the east. And there have been this move towards Shevchenko Street up here on the northeastern outskirts. So If you look at the war map, you got this Pinarodny gains there. Poulet-Volon actually has a little sort of bridgehead a little bit further in to the west. And then you have these pushes towards Shevchenko Street up here and the fighting around Maximienko Street there. They War Mapper never seem to have the Russians as far advanced as other mappers do in that eastern area, but certainly a lot of pressure going on now in the northeast areas of um, Bakhmut. Here's OSINT Defender saying Russian forces made slight advances in the eastern and southern districts of Bakhmut, with several high-rise residential buildings being secured. And there is that forested area that they here OSINT Defender says they're now firmly in control of. Um, and no report says northeast of Bakhmut, Russian forces come closer to Shevchenko Street. Russia did not enter the outskirts, and yeah, so there we go. So let's have a look on my map. We piece that all together. I've moved the Russian lines you can see behind the Ukrainian lines now to suggest that they are pressuring right on the edge of these roads in the outskirts. And as we come down further down towards the Art Winery that I haven't heard mentioned recently, and this north to south is a Shevchenko Street that has been mentioned a few times just now that you just heard. And they appear to be pretty much on the edge of fighting there. So perhaps I should move my Russian line further to the west. Let's have a look what Poulet-Voulon has. So I think that's probably Shevchenko Street there. So they are still back there, maybe a bit of grey zone. The Ukrainians have been pushed back, as according to this map here. Um, and yeah, the Russians have been pushed back to the northeast, according to him, in that little pocket. Not sure about what's going on there. And then Maximienko Street. So they are Poulet-Voulon has them in the northern part of Maximienko Street, which goes north to south here, rather than fighting right along it. I just don't have much detail of exactly where they are. So just to let you know what Poulet-Voulon, if I was to represent that here, that would be just having this northern area and not being as advanced elsewhere. And then we have the waste disposal plant just to the south of there. So it might look something like this. But again, that's just going on that one mapper, just to indicate that no one seems to have 100% knowledge about exactly what's going on, and you're trying to piece it together from what everyone says. As we go further on down south, not too much news about Opitny, just here. Fighting obviously will be continuing there, but there's quite a bit of talk about Klishchivka and claims that it was taken. So let's go back to ISW. They say Russian sources claim that Russian forces captured Klishchivka. This is not the first time that's been claimed. Prigozhin claimed that Wagner Group fighters exclusively captured Klishchivka and that fighting is ongoing around the settlements. Geolocated footage published on January 18th indicates that Russian forces have likely made marginal advances in the northeastern outskirts of Bakhmut, where we were just talking about, and Russian mill bloggers have claimed that Russian forces made marginal advances in the eastern and southern outskirts of Bakhmut. Again, what I've shown you. So, but it really, Klishchivka is the place where it's all happening. Ukraine is claiming they are repelling forces around there. Rebar says they were still fighting in the vicinity of Klishchivka. Wagner assault squads liberated the village of Klishchivka, pushing the 3rd Assault Brigade and territorial defense from the settlement, but fighting is ongoing around it. Its liberation and the capture of the fortification nearby allows Russia to keep under fire control the Chezhny Bakhmut road. That's what they say that every day. Um, so they are claiming that it has been taken. But again, it's not just about Klishchivka itself. It's about just behind Klishchivka in the higher ground where there are entrenchments built and defenses built in. So not great news there. What no report says, Russian forces performing recon north of Klishchivka to bypass towards Ivanivska, and Klishchivka is not taken. The town is heavily contested. Ukraine controls the high ground. So yeah, the claim that they do indeed control the high ground, but it's not been captured by the Russians. It is still contested. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I've indicated on my map that the Russian claim is there, the Ukrainian claim is probably will be around there, but there is fighting around Klishchivka, and it just again premature of me saying that they would have might have culminated there. And say they had, that they might have done, but it is looking difficult here. They really need to hold that, because if Klishchivka goes and the entrenchments behind, then even if Ivska goes and this road is compromised, and that is a major um, logistics route into Bakhmut. When you're talking about Solidar, so just going on back to the north of Bakhmut, which is a general claim, is that now that the Russians have found themselves in urban areas, the boot is on the other foot now, because actually Ukrainians get this opportunity to pound the Russians as they are in these urban areas, and they are doing that to quite some effect, taking out ammunition dumps, taking out um, troop accumulations. One would have thought. So yeah, the artillery is certainly active on behalf of the Ukrainians in that area, giving the Russians a hard time. So up here, now that the Russians uh, are in these urban areas, they are no longer the ones pummeling the urban areas to destroy the Ukrainians. However, Bakhmut city itself is ripe for Russian artillery to attempt to flatten it, as they have done elsewhere. Just another sort of general claim here. Privately, this is in a BBC article. Privately, some Ukrainian soldiers have blamed poor coordination between different units for the loss of Solidar, and have acknowledged that Russia may now be better placed to encircle the far bigger and strategically more important neighboring Bakhmut. This is probably putting on the fact that there were um, a lot of successful jamming of Ukrainian comms by the Russians, and that really caused a lot of problems for the Ukrainians. So this is that quote there, but it does go on to say, but the mood among the frontline units in villages like Avdivka, now just a few hundred meters from Russian positions, appears to be quietly confident. Furious Ukrainian air and artillery bombardments appear to be blocking Russian attempts to move forward both from the north and from the southwestern outskirts of Bakhmut. This is what I'm saying. So artillery is being really effective. Arguably, it's a controlled situation. Says one of the Ukrainians. I believe in my commander. Sometimes it's really better to take a step back, then after that to make a counterattack and crush the enemy. Each day we're destroying enemy positions. Interesting opinions there. So yeah, it's difficult um, around Bakhmut, but uh, they are putting up some stiff defense. It's really going to be about Klishchivka. There are Ukrainian reinforcements there, but it is getting quite a lot of pressure from the Russians. Okay, let's move away from Bakhmut and further down south. Actually, just before I go, I'm going to show you this infographic, this GIF, sorry, from OSINT Defender, that actually shows some a little bit more Russian territory gained than I've got on my maps, both just to the south of Bakhmut, the central town, and also so this kind of area here, and also to the southwest of Klishchivka. So let's just play that, and you can get a sense of the advances that the Russians have made. So there's Klishchivka itself, um, and it's you can see it's getting pressured from the northeast, and then the Russians are really sort of making some gains over towards the west as well. So that is definitely a bit of a problem if that is indeed a true representation of the lines. Now, a number of my sources don't mention anything to do with Avdivka today, which is interesting in itself, I guess. Does it mean it's all a bit quieter there? The ISW says all the usual sort of places, Vodyanye, repelled, attacked. But actually, most of the activity seems to be south of there, near Marinka. There is some geolocated footage of Russians very close to Novelska, which is this tiny settlement there, and that repelled attacks around there, but perhaps Russians getting a little bit closer. And then we come on to Marinka, but even sort of Rebar says nothing about these kind of areas. Going on to talk about Zaporizhia, really, it goes Klishivka down to pretty much Zaporizhia. Um, if we come down to Marinka, Poulet-Volant, map, nice and clear again. I do like it. Has the Russians pressuring. They have the kind of more northern areas of Marinka, which you can see here. Perhaps a little bit more territory for the Russians up here, as according to Poulet-Volant, but still the center is contested. And then there's talk about Pobjeda repelling another attack. Now, ISW claims, or a Russian mill blogger claimed that Russian forces attacked near Novelsk, as I've told you, and broke through Ukrainian defenses near Pobjeda, reaching a local railway station. Well, I can't find any railway station anywhere near Pobjeda. It's quite a very small settlement. There doesn't seem to be any rail links near there. I mean, that grey uh, line is a road, as far as I can work out. I can't see any rail links at all. So apparently somewhere near there, and that's a road. That yellow one is a road. So apparently some rail station near Pobjeda has been reached by the Russians. Can't work out where that is. And then we move on down to further south. Again, there's heavy fighting in Marinka, but just no real reports coming out there about anything significant. So what we're going to do, we're going to move from this corner down here near Vuhledar that's been relatively quiet, past Velika Novosilka that has had some activity recently, and we're going to move all along to around this Orahiv area and north of Polohoy as well. So Poulet-Volant has Polohoy area just around here, going to the Russians over the last month, though, or since New Year's, really. So over the last sort of 20 days, the Ukrainians have retreated some, and the Russians have taken some territory there up towards Merna and Zahirna. So on my map, that is around here. So it could be that actually there's a chunk of this territory now in Russian control. But the news coming out last night, and let's go to Rebar to see what they say. In the Orhiv sector, Zaporizhia region, Russian troops are testing Ukrainian positions at Malahi Shebaki, Stepova, and Malatokmachka, Nestoryanka. A surprise attack on strongholds of the 65th and 128th Brigades forced them to retreat, leaving, according to some reports, 4 villages. Interestingly, so War Monitor said it appears that the armed forces of the Russian Federation have launched an offensive in the Zaporizhia region. And I was talking about this in my news this morning, which is some are saying that this is a Russian offensive, whereas ISW is reporting it as reconnaissance in force rather than anything big. So a Russian mill blogger claimed that Russian forces conducted a localized defensive operation around Orhiv, and that Russian reconnaissance and sabotage groups are conducting reconnaissance in force operations near these 4 places that I'm just about to show you: Mali Shabaki, Stepova, Malatokmachka, and Nestoryanka. The Russian military blogger added that Ukrainian formations are spreading information that they lost control of these 4 settlements, and Rogov may have been referring to these settlements in his original announcement. This is Vladimir Rogov, Zaporizhia Oblast Occupation Deputy. This is the Russians claiming they captured 4 settlements. The Ukrainian General Staff responded to these Russian claims by asserting that Ukrainian artillery defeated elements of the Russian 58th Combined Arms Army and attempted this attack. The Ukrainian General Staff published geolocated footage that showed Ukrainian artillery striking Russian forces south of Stepova, and reported that Ukrainian forces eliminated 3 Russian tanks and about 30 service members. So differing claims. I'm not changing my map, but here are the claims. So the claims are that you've got Stepova there, Shibaki there, Nestoryanka, and Mala Tokmachka have been captured by the Russians. Obviously, that's a really important settlement because it cuts this road that connects all these settlements here, which appear to be under Ukrainian control still. So that's quite a big move on behalf of the Russians. Is there any truth to it? Well, they've almost certainly attacked there. The Ukrainians have hit them with artillery. Who controls what is, I don't think we can know yet. I mean, here it is on Poulet-Volant's map. You can see very clearly these places. As they're moving towards Orhiv. Is this an offensive or is it reconnaissance in force? I doubt it's an offensive, as I talked to you about earlier. They know that Ukrainians have in fact, the Russians have been saying that the Ukrainians have been amassing their forces around here. So why attack where the Ukrainians are strongest? It would be pretty senseless to do that. No report says of this. Russian sources claim that Russian forces took control of 4 settlements south of Orkhiv. I have yet to confirm this, but it sounds fake. I would say, yeah, don't believe that until you get better confirmation. I would just think there have been attacks around there. Couple of extra things to say that Zaporizhzhia Oblast saw a record 224 Russian fire attacks on 21 settlements on January the 19th, so yesterday. 34 civilian facilities were damaged by the attack, so it's been under an awful lot of pressure. There has been this attack on Mykhailivka by HIMARS, one presumes, a Russian base, a sauna environment to be precise, was hit yesterday around 9 p.m. There's also a report about a warehouse being set up in a school that was hit. I don't know if this is the same thing. Reportedly, not only soldiers but also officers were killed when the Ukrainians gave them some extra heat. So this is, we'll wait to see what the exact damage of this is, but that's quite a major hit apparently on a place in Mykhailivka, which is there just to the west of Tokmak and northwest of Melitopol. So another big hit there. Usual artillery duels along Kherson, nothing unusual to report. And Crimea, no great news out there. Which brings us to the end of the Frontline update for today. Thank you so much for listening. Please like, subscribe, and share. Hopefully, that's of some use for you and interest. All the ways you can support the channel in the description below. Appreciate you being here. I will speak to you in the Ukraine War Update extra video later today.